Alan, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Pleasure. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. God bless you. So I'm just a regular guy, married, got some kids, work in IT. For, I guess, more than a decade, I did a lot of kind of apologetics themed blogging, back when blogging was a thing. And, ever since then, since blogging hasn't really been that much of a thing recently, I've been doing a lot more street evangelism. I go to a variety of locations. Perhaps most interestingly, I like to do what I might call an evangelistic type outreach outside of churches, like evangelical churches, and try to maybe provoke a little bit of thought in their mind in what I like to call the ministry industrial complex, and express a little bit of my contempt for what I think they're getting wrong, which is quite a lot. And sometimes I like to engage people on the topic of apologetics, especially the presuppositional kind. So there you go.
Presup. Okay. I should have picked that one. That's a more interesting topic. All right. So which worldview is a better account for human rights? What is your position on that?
Yeah, I tried to pick, when you talk about precept, there's kind of like there's the how do you know for eternity stuff. And that question does play into it. But I think most people think of that question in terms of styles of debating whether God exists. And I kind of think that debate's been done quite a lot. We probably don't need any more of those. So I like to discuss other topics if possible. That's why I try to come up with something that I haven't seen discussed all that much. So yeah, I had about 500 word kind of opener to frame my view. Is that okay?
I guess.
Okay. Well, I'll try to make it real quick here. Let's see. I'll have to summarize from what I'd written it down. I already summarized it somewhat before. Anyway, I think it's best to assume hypothetically two different packages of the world. So the universe is one way, or the universe is another way. What flows out of that? What are the implications of that foundation? So hypothetically, if we want to start with Jesus is Lord, so Jesus is Lord, what flows out of that? Well, in that case, rights are the best way to think about human rights is in terms of the commands that God has issued to all human beings. The two greatest commandments, according to the Lord Jesus, are that we love God and love neighbor. God's character is the very definition of what is right and good and just, and he's communicated that to us. And so my neighbor has the right to expect that he be loved by me and anyone else because of God's commands. So the only exceptions to that blanket command would be few and specific, having to do with forfeiture of that expectation because of one's sinful behavior. I'm commanded to love my neighbor unless those specific forfeitures come into play. In short, a human right is that which is owed to others by me because of God's commands. On the other hand, let's assume just hypothetically that Jesus is not Lord, and the universe is as naturalists say it is. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try, et cetera, et cetera. Or as Carl Sagan said, the universe seems neither benign nor hostile, merely indifferent. Many quotes could be stacked upon that, in which case the moral value of any action, if naturalism is true, is the same as the moral value of any other action, even that which seems to be its opposite or its negation. So you could adopt a child into a loving home. What's the moral value? 0, as far as I can tell. You could rape a child to death. What's the moral value? 0, just the same as adopting a child into a loving home. The significance, the meaning, the value of any action is the same as the significance or meaning of any other action, and also everyone ends up dead, and there's no authority to tell you which is which. So any talk of rights on naturalism are the imaginations of whatever segment of society happens to be in vogue at the time. There's no way to know whether you've gone forward or backward. Any appeal to flourishing or lack of suffering or minimizing pain begs the question. Any appeal to evidence is a category error. The idea of human rights on naturalism is incoherent as far as I can tell. So thank you.
All right. So why would saying that morality is a law of physics be not objective, but God said so is objective?
Why say that God said so is objective?
Yeah. So like you said, under naturalism, it doesn't make sense. I'm saying that, yes, it does. Most academic philosophers are atheists, 70%, and they're also moral realists. They believe in objective morality, no God.
Mm-hmm.
And so why would morality being a law of physics, laws of physics are objective, not qualify as a rational basis of objective morality, but God saying so, which is subjective, is?
I didn't use the word objective personally because I think that has a kind of have a point there. At the same time, God being the one with all authority to tell us what to do and what not to do, the one who made the universe. So I do think that, given the fact that I'm a creation and he is the creator, and there's this massive distinction in between us, I think that could come into play in terms of subjective versus objective.
So objective means stance independent truth value proposition. Stance independent means a person thinks. A stance is a position. Person has a position. So if God has a position that's stance dependent, which would be subjective, the level of authority is irrelevant. It's appeal to authority fallacy. The level of authority is irrelevant to truth whatsoever. So when we talk about like objective truths, things that are true, stance independent of any opinion of any person or mind of any kind. Laws of physics are objective. Gravity is objective. It doesn't matter what anybody's opinion is. It's there. So we think morality is like that. So if morality is, by objective, we mean like it's a thing that's in reality, right? Like subjective is an opinion. So if we think morality is a real thing that exists, it would have to objectively exist, right? If it subjectively existed, it wouldn't be real. It would be imaginary. So when we say morality exists objectively, we want to say that it's a thing that exists independent of any opinions or stances. And it seems like if morality was a law of physics, that would be a more objective basis than if morality was grounded in a God, which is stance dependent.
Yeah, if you want to use it, define those terms that way, which is fine with me. I'm fine with that definition. I didn't use objective or subjective in my opener, or the way I think about it, really. So I think that's a fair point. I would question whether, given naturalism, we could even grant that sense perception and all that kind of stuff is generally reliable, which is something I don't generally grant, but for the purposes of this discussion, I would. I would wonder how we come to the conclusions about what moral laws exist. Have you thought? Could you give me a rundown of that real quick?
What moral laws exist? I think that morality is described as any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. Voluntary assistance of will is moral. What? Oh, did you just refresh?
No, I did not. My internet sometimes cuts in and out, even though I'm wired. It's a wired connection.
So I think the moral principles are any involuntary imposition of will is immoral, involuntary assistance of will is moral.
How did you come to, why do you make that statement rather than its opposite? Why not swap it around and go the exact opposite with the exact same amount of assertive, conclusiveness?
Following the evidence of moral intuition, moral progress, the moral dilemmas, and the philosophical distinctions that have been in the field of morality and ethics over the past several thousand years.
Why not take all of those as evidence of the contrary?
Well, because they're unidirectional. Like moral progress is the fact that the moral intuitions of people have changed over time, and it goes in one direction. It goes in the direction of assisting more people rather than killing babies more, essentially. And so we'll start off with morality is a word we use to refer to specific phenomenon and feelings and their correlation. So if we see somebody punch a baby, we feel that's bad. We use the word immorality to refer to the bad feeling, and we think it's bad. Morality is helping an old lady across the street. That's good. We get a good feeling from that. So we think these feelings correspond to something in reality. There's something there to which these feelings correspond. Like if we see red, it corresponds to a wavelength. If we see blue, it corresponds to a different wavelength. So we have some kind of input data, and we think that input data corresponds to something that's really there. And when we say the word red, we can obviously change the name to blue, but no one cares. Like the fact of the thing is there regardless of what we call it. The label doesn't matter. So morality is the word we use to refer to whatever's causing the good feeling correspondence, just like red is the word we refer to what causes the sensation that we refer to as red. So the name here makes no difference. There is a thing, there is a pattern to that thing, and we're going to call the end that corresponds to our good feelings the moral one, because that's how we use the words.
I object to a couple things there in terms of the definitions. One is you use the word assist, and the other is basing it a lot on kind of the feelings or the feelings of the majority or whatever. Why not take? We might go starting with the second assertion first. Why not take the good feelings that we have and act opposite to them? Why not try to minimize those feelings?
You could. It just wouldn't correspond to the evidence.
What evidence?
Moral intuitions, moral progress, moral dilemmas, and philosophical distinctions.
why not take those moral intuitions and all those things that you just laid out, and why not believe that those are actually wrong, and that progressing against them is the opposite way, is the right way?
You could. That would just be against the evidence. So it's like looking at the evidence that the world is round. This is evidence for the evidence is something that increases the probability that a proposition is true, and so the pattern in these things increases the proposition that morality is true. And so you can go against it. It would just go against the evidence that increases the probability that the proposition is true.
I think you're misunderstanding my question. Like that, I'm saying that that's equally probably evidence in the opposite direction. How do you know it's evidence for what you think morality is, rather than going against it would be that? Jump the evidence to, like, what scientific studies have been done to link, intuitions by a bunch of people or whatever, or the progress of them or the development over time, to calling it, like, to saying this is preferable, morally preferable, whereas the other thing, the opposite, is morally condemnatory.
So the intuitions are the phenomenon. Like if I see a color, it's a thing that exists. It's a thing. We're trying to say what explains that. And so morality is the same way. We have a feeling. That's the phenomenon we're trying to explain. And whatever causes that, that's what morality is whatever is causing those feelings. And so if there's some pattern to those feelings, and that pattern can be used, or you can describe that pattern with the principle, and that principle can make predictions, and those predictions are confirmed, that's evidence that your hypothesis is correct, and it's evidence against the alternative. So if I make a prediction about moral intuition, moral progress, solving dilemmas, whatever, and I get it right, that's evidence whatever my hypothesis is correct, and the alternative is wrong.
Okay, so the evidence is constituted of the opinions of people?
No,
is that right?
That's the phenomenon. Okay. It's like if I see a color, that's the phenomenon, and we're trying to explain that. So we have a phenomenon, then we say, I think this phenomenon is caused by hypothesis X. If it's caused by hypothesis X, here's some other things we could expect to see in the future. We look at the other things and we say, if I'm correct, that's evidence of hypothesis X. So we see morality, that's the phenomenon. If morality is objective, we would expect there to be a pattern to this across time period. It would change in one direction and not the other direction. We look and we see moral progress. There's a pattern. It goes in the same direction. If we expect it to be objective, we'd expect there to be a pattern across cultures. We look, there's a pattern across cultures. If we expect there to be objective, we expect that there's certain philosophical dilemmas that outline like the principles that we would express through morality. We look at the moral dilemmas, trolley problem, Gödel's incomplete, or no, G.E. Moore's open question argument, Euthyphro dilemma, etc. We say, oh, look, there are these patterns that we can see. And so all of those things were predicted by this model that morality is real. They got it right. That's evidence of that hypothesis, which would be evidence against the hypothesis. It's the opposite or not real.
Okay, so it sounds like to me you're looking at the way that people generally are, and then you're like, oh, maybe the way that people have their ideas have progressed, we're going to call that morality. But that's not at all how I think of morality. Morality rather has to do with, discussing whether something is right, whether something is wrong, whether something is something that we ought to do. Okay. So how does the opinion of the majority, even over the course of centuries, how does that inform what I ought to do today?
Okay, so morality is the phenomenon, right? We see someone punch a baby, we feel that's wrong. That's all morality is.
So opinions. Okay, so people's opinions are what we see today. Granted.
No, it's a phenomenon. Like if no one ever felt that's wrong, there would be no morality. The word would not exist.
How do we know that? Make the choice, like make the connection between feelings and morality for me.
Okay, so like if I see the color red, right, or I see my TV screen, if I never saw, if all human beings were blind, the word sight would not exist, right? There would be no word, right? You with me?
Sure, probably.
Okay, so that doesn't mean that sight is subjective. It's just not people's feelings. That's the input data. That's what we get. So it's not just, oh, sight is just your feelings. Like, no, it's a thing. It's a phenomenon that exists in reality, right? It's a phenomenon.
Okay, sight, sure.
Okay. And so the same thing applies to our feelings. Those are also a phenomenon. In fact, senses are a form of feelings.
Yeah, feelings. Sure. That's exactly what I was saying. Sure.
All right. And then if we want to say that those are real, like sometimes I see things that are illusions, like a unicorn, not a real thing. It's an illusion. But sometimes I see things that are real things, like a TV. That's a real thing. And so we need some way to differentiate. Is it one of the just the psychological things, or is it one of the things that's true independent of the psychological things, right?
Okay, so now you're not talking about something made of matter. You're talking about a moral dilemma. What do I do? Do I rape this child, or do I adopt this child?
No, we're not there
Right?
yet. We're not
No,
there yet.
not there yet. Okay.
So just there's a phenomenon. I feel bad when I see these things. I
Okay.
have a hypothesis. This feeling is caused by a real thing.
I feel bad. Okay, sure.
Yes. So like I see a TV. I think this is caused by a real TV being there. Same
Okay.
thing. You get input data and you got two hypotheses. It's psychological or it's actually a thing in the world. Those are the two hypotheses, right?
Okay.
And so then you make testable predictions. Say, if it's real in the world, then I would expect this to occur in the future. Testable predictions. If you get those right, that's evidence of your hypothesis. Problem solved.
Okay, slow down here.
101.
All right, so if I see, don't relate it to a TV anymore. Give me a real life example of what you were talking about, morally speaking.
Punching a baby feels bad.
Okay, maybe it feels good though.
It doesn't.
Right. To some it does, right?
Right. To the majority.
Okay, so how do we know who's right there? Because that's a data point in the other direction.
So it's the exact same with seeing a TV. Some people don't see a TV. Some people do see a TV. How do we determine if the TV is really there? You make novel testable predictions. You say, if there's really a TV, I can predict into the future that this will happen. If I see it, if this prediction comes true, because we're very bad at predicting the future. Our imagination is not very good at predicting the future. So if you have a hypothesis that predicts the future and that's confirmed, then anybody who disagrees is wrong.
Okay. Now talk about punching a baby.
So if I punch a baby and say, this makes me feel bad, and that makes that person feel good, and I think this is caused by some objective morality, I can make a prediction about other things that I see in the future. And if I get those right, it's evidence of mine. Moral intuition, moral progress, philosophical dilemmas.
No, hold on. Don't be more specific. So we were talking about punching a baby. Now give me another data point that would help.
If morality is objective, we will find a pattern in morality across cultures that is consistent. We do find that. If morality is objective, we will find a pattern of progress through cultures across time. We find that. If morality is objective, we'll find certain philosophical dilemmas outline the general principles that we see in these morality. We find that.
Except when we don't. I mean, for example, for example, holding to the supernatural being a morally obligatory stance. You seem to disagree with that, though, right?
Yes. What does that have to do with what I said?
Well, over the course of time, societies have, held on to supernatural, and even people who don't hold to the supernatural are often ostracized, mistreated within the society, and all that kind of stuff. So that would be the majority over the course of all of human history, as far as we know.
I have no idea what you're asking right now. So, yes, people, if the supernatural is real, you can make a prediction.
No, not that. I'm talking about the moral. I'm talking about the moral. The consideration that believing in the supernatural is morally obligatory. That seems to be the case for most of human history and most of human society.
No, I have no idea what you're asking right there. No.
Okay.
What do you mean belief in the supernatural is morally obligatory? I don't know anybody who said that before anywhere in my channel.
Okay. Well, what I'm trying to help you understand, what I'm trying from my perspective to help you see is that it sounds like you're saying that over the course of time, the majority of movement in moral intuition and progress and all of the other things that you laid out will lead us to confirm the hypothesis that we have about punching babies. And I'm talking about, but you go against that in other areas, because there are other areas in which most of human history thinks a thing, but you disagree with that.
I think I understand. So no, this is not a bandwagon. What most people believe is irrelevant. It's the novel testable predictions that are what evidence is saying. I have a hypothesis to explain a phenomenon. If my hypothesis is true, here's something I can predict about the future. If I get it right, that's evidence. Number of people is irrelevant. I could predict a gold brick will appear in front of me if I pray to Bob. If it happens, that's evidence of Bob. It makes no difference how many people believe it. So the number of people here is irrelevant. What's relevant is the predictions and whether you get them right.
Okay, what's your prediction again? I thought that your prediction had to do with progress and people
what
believing
the prediction is doesn't make a difference. If the prediction
the feelings that people hold about it, because you've referred to feelings, you've referred to how you feel when you punch a baby.
What the prediction is makes no difference if you get the prediction right. So I can predict that in 5 seconds you will see a blue elephant fly in front of your face. That's a subjective experience for you, but if it happens, it's evidence for whatever my hypothesis is. So saying what the prediction is having relevance to patterns in moral intuitions, if it's right, it's still evidence. It doesn't matter if it's subjective predictions of what you experience.
Okay. Yeah. This track of discussion is seems to be well, I've never really heard it stated in these terms, so it might be partly be because of my ignorance. Let me ask it in a different way. Is there any way to talk about things in terms of their moral value? Does moral value exist?
Yes, that's literally the synonymous with morality.
Okay. The moral value of punching a baby versus the moral value of adopting a baby. Run down briefly the difference and how you know.
Punching a baby is an involuntary imposition of will. Adopting a baby is a voluntary assistance of will. So one's moral, one's immoral. The reason we know that is because we can look at patterns of moral intuition, make predictions about what those have.
Hold on. What kind of patterns?
Moral intuition, literally the things I just said to you. So we've been over that.
Patterns that occur where? Patterns that are seen where? They're known how?
By observation in patterns of moral intuition, moral progress.
No, hold on. Patterns of what? Patterns of moral intuition. Moral intuition is a feeling that people have, right?
Yeah, I've already went over this.
Yeah, it's a feeling that people have, right?
So if I predicted that
a lot of people. Wait. Is it a lot of people?
The number of people is irrelevant. Number of people is
irrelevant. Well, that's what you said, and that's why it was really strange. I don't understand what you mean. What is moral intuition?
Evidence is novel, testable prediction. So if I predict you are going to feel a warm and fuzzy feeling in exactly 13 seconds, and we wait 13 seconds and you feel a warm and fuzzy feeling, that's evidence for my hypothesis. It doesn't matter the number of people who feel it. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 10. It doesn't matter if it's just a subjective feeling for you. It's irrelevant. What matters is if I can make a future prediction about things we don't know yet and I get it right, that's evidence. That's evidence for one hypothesis and not evidence of another one.
So if somebody predicts that I'm going to feel a warm fuzzy feeling from punching a baby in 13 seconds, that's evidence in the other direction, right?
If it worked, yes.
Okay, and it does work for quite a few people, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't.
Well, it does, because those are the people that we cast out from society and we put in prison.
No,
but it does work for them, right?
No.
I mean, are there people that feel that?
Some.
There are, right?
Very small.
There are some, right?
0.000 something.
Yeah, but there are some. There are some, aren't there? Because it's not about bandwagon, is it?
No. So
it's not about number of people, is it?
Stop. Listen to me. That prediction is made for psychology. Psychology makes that prediction about sociopaths and psychopaths. So that's not a prediction.
No. Oh, hold on. That's begging the question to just say that the people who are at the extremity of society are the wrong ones and the ones that we're going to label and cast into the trash.
I'm saying that prediction was made.
Right.
Somebody did make that prediction. Wait. Somebody did make that prediction, but it wasn't for objective immorality. It would still be evidence for morality in some case. That was evidence for psychological dysfunction. So that prediction was made. So it's not novel. It's a prediction that's already been made.
But that's the question I'm asking though. How do you know that it's dysfunction? Why aren't those guys right?
It's a prediction that was made for a different hypothesis that's already been explained. So
the baby punchers though. Well, so you proposed an experiment.
So how would you answer the question? Why do you think one is moral and one is immoral?
God's commands and God's character.
And what evidence do you have that he actually made those commands and didn't make the opposite commands and you're just misinformed?
Yeah. So I think that, like I said, I prefer to think of things in terms of the package deal. Okay. So if naturalism is true, that's what we've been talking about so far. If naturalism is true, I've been asking you questions trying to understand on what you base morality. Okay. Now, if we switch over to, well, I think that you're committing category errors there. But if you want to talk about Jesus as Lord for a moment, which might be helpful as well, because I've been questioning you, Ken. You've been kind enough to explain. I appreciate that. So if Jesus is Lord, he communicates clearly. He has spoken his word such that people can understand it. If Jesus is Lord, I'm just telling you what the situation is. So
the question is why do you think that's true? So just saying if he's
Lord. Well, because Jesus, if you're asking why I think it's true, then it's because Jesus opened my eyes. If you're asking me to defend it, then I would point to the ultimate standard of all evidence and knowledge in the universe, which is the Word of God.
Right. So here's the comparison. One is from my worldview, we start with the evidence, the phenomenon. Then we try to make a principle that describes the phenomenon. Then we use the principle to make predictions. And if the predictions are confirmed, then it's evidence. Yours is...
Except when you don't.
Yeah. No, that's literally the scientific method.
Well, that's literally what we just talked about. We talked about the psychopaths and the people who were in prison.
No. Those are also explained by science.
What I'm talking about.
So it's all explained by science. Like you're misunderstanding.
You could be the thing is you could be the psychopath, and I think that's one of the points that you're missing there. You on the one hand you say no bandwagon, the number of people doesn't matter, but then on the other hand you're like, but the number of people matters, and I think that's
no, that was not at all what I said ever. I said novel testable predictions for literally anything is always evidence. Okay. That's what I said.
Except when it's not evidence. Yeah.
No, I never said that.
Well, you did say it. You just didn't say it in those words.
No, I never said that.
When I presented counter evidence, you dismissed it.
No, I proved your dumbass argument wrong. So let me try to explain this to you again. If someone makes a prediction that punching a baby in the face will make you a warm and fuzzy feeling, and it happens, that is evidence. Like I said, I literally said that.
Good. Okay, good. We agree.
It doesn't happen. No one's done that. That is
it does. It does happen.
No. Stop. This is where you're confused. You have your head up your ass here. We know that is not the case. There is evidence for the alternative, because of how many novel testable predictions have been made for the alternative, like moral progress,
How many?
moral intuition. Yes.
Would that be numbers, like numbers of people that hold those intuitions?
No.
Numbers of times people.
No.
But
Again,
the evidences are
Oh
intuitions
my
that
God.
occur in people's minds, right?
No. Oh my God. Again, you're
No?
so bad at this. You're
They-
so bad at this.
They're
Stop
okay,
talking.
how are they
Stop
testable?
talking and listen. Stop talking. If I make a prediction that in 5 seconds a fly is going to hit me in the face, therefore the world is flat, that could be evidence. It's a novel testable prediction. But the fact that we have hundreds of thousands of pieces of evidence the world is round, our evidence is against that hypothesis. So if some moron made a prediction that this one person is going to punch a baby and feel warm and fuzzy, that's great. That one prediction would be evidence for the hypothesis, but it wouldn't contradict the hundreds of thousands of examples of other things that are explained from the alternative hypothesis. It's very fucking simple. It's like basic science 101. But what matters here is that my model uses real evidence. Yours uses nothing. Yours says, my Sky Daddy told me in a book. Mine uses the scientific method. Scientific method is a rational way to differentiate imagination from reality. Your book is not. So if we're trying to compare which is the more reliable methodology, one that is able to look at the evidence, start with the evidence or the phenomenon, start with the phenomenon, build a principle to describe the phenomenon, and then make predictions that are in the future based on that hypothesis and get them right. That's real evidence. That is what real evidence looks like. Sky Daddy told me in a book is not that. That is a bad method. And so we're trying to say which one of these methods is better. And I want you to explain why you think your method is a better method here.
Yeah, the method as you've explained it is that you take, at the same time as you say that it's not the numbers of people and it's not the bandwagon, it actually basically is that.
No.
And then you say the people who disagree with that, they're not going to count toward progress. Maybe because they're the ones who are wrong. Okay. As opposed to the creator of the universe, who can tell us what to do and tells us what is good. And he's the one who defines what is good. And he's the one who will bring consequences when we violate those rights. So in every way,
appeal to authority fallacy, appeal to consequence fallacy. So you just
it's not appeal to authority fallacy is not appeal to authority is not necessarily a fallacy if the guy knows everything. And if he has all authority to tell us what to do, if he literally gets to
if you're saying
tell us what is good, and
the fact that he's an authority makes it true, that's an appeal to authority fallacy.
Well, he is the authority, and we have a duty to obey him.
That's the appeal to authority fallacy.
Yeah, well, it's not a fallacy though. When he is the one who knows everything, it's only a fallacy if somebody doesn't really know what they're talking about.
An appeal to authority fallacy is if you say something is true because they are the authority. That's an appeal to authority fallacy.
But he is the authority, so
that's an appeal to authority fallacy. If it's not,
it's okay though, because Jesus is Lord on this package. Remember, you're trying to import naturalistic reasoning onto the Jesus package. You got to keep them separated.
What you said is true. So, an appeal to authority fallacy is not always fallacious. So, for example, if you say the mechanic can fix my car, that's true. It's not true because he's an authority. It's true because he knows how to fix the car. But the fact that he is an authority doesn't make him the ability to give you a car. No, it's the fact that he has knowledge and knows how to fix the car. So the fact that they are an authority,
so Jesus knows everything.
The truth value.
Jesus knows everything. There you go.
Okay.
Cool.
Great. That would be great.
Okay. Glad to dispense with that one.
The fact he's an authority is not the reason it's true. It's the fact he knows everything.
I would say it's both. But if you want to reject one and take the other, it's fine.
Then that's an appeal to authority fallacy. We know you're logically flawed.
Well, but the problem is that Jesus is Lord over what you think is fallacy and what you think is right. I mean, you can't even properly understand the world around you. So on Jesus, on the Jesus package, you're not, well, so you think, but on the Jesus package, there's a lot of things that you're missing. Well, you can't prove it either.
But I want to go back to the topic. I can easily prove it. I think therefore I am. Problem solved.
Alrighty.
God can't make that fall.
I discussed that in my debate with Shane. You didn't even, but anyway, that's fine. We could talk about this some other time.
I have no idea. I don't know who Shane is, but anyway.
Okay. Shane is great. Yeah, sure.
But so the topic here is I have a method. I start with the phenomenon. I don't beg the question and assume my conclusion. I start with the phenomenon. Here's the thing we're seeing. Okay. And then I make a principle to describe patterns in that phenomenon.
The phenomenon is the feeling.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is still better than yours. So my Sky Daddy told me is worse than a feeling.
Okay.
All you have is a feeling. You have nothing but a feeling. So you just have
not
feelings.
If Jesus is Lord.
It's still
on naturalism. Just on naturalism, that's fine. Okay, so it's a feeling.
So we're comparing the two hypotheses here. One is there are feelings of morality, and one is there's a feeling there's a Sky Daddy. Both feelings. But now I go.
Well, that's not the same. That's not the same thing at all. But anyway, just on naturalism. So there's
literally the exact same. But so mine goes further. Mine goes further. On Sky Daddy, you have a feeling there's a Sky Daddy. I have a feeling there's morality. Those are the same.
Okay.
We can't assume they're true. We've got to start with the evidence. Those are the thing. You got a feeling of Sky Daddy. I got a feeling of morality. And now we have to say, well, where do we go from here? My model looks at the evidence, tries to find a pattern, describes the pattern with a principle, makes
Okay. The evidence is I
feelings.
feel
We
something, right? I feel
just
something.
like your Sky Daddy. You
Okay.
feel as a
And
Sky
then the
Daddy. I
pattern
feel as
is,
morality.
and then the pattern is multiple people feel a
So
thing, right?
we've gone through. I have a pattern here. What's your pattern? Your pattern is I have a feeling of Sky Daddy. Now what?
So on. Oh, you're asking about me now. Okay, so
Yes.
if Jesus is, so remember, Jesus is Lord. This is not naturalism, and then I feel Jesus.
Right, you feel Jesus.
No, it's not even that. Jesus is Lord, which comes with all the implications of the worldview.
You feel Jesus is Lord. Okay. Now what?
Well, yeah, I feel Jesus is Lord. Also, I know He's Lord. Also, He is Lord.
Starting.
Okay.
If
the package. Okay, so
there's no.
That's not the starting point.
Yeah, that's the starting point.
Okay, so.
Well, I mean, how could what is not a feeling in your head? What ideas are not ideas? Right, they're all ideas, right? They have to.
I definitely feel that Jesus is Lord, but
yes, so that's
not what that's not what I'm starting with. No. Okay, so we're not going to be able to communicate well if you don't allow me at least to frame my own discussion.
Well, so I'm just trying to follow here. Like you have a brain, or you have thoughts, and those thoughts are the things that you start with.
No.
Right? You can't start with.
No, I do not start with those. I start with Jesus as Lord.
Okay, how can you have Jesus as Lord without it being a thought?
Because it's not a thought. It's a completely different category of thing. That's what I respond to Jesus' lordship with. A thought is something that I'm given by God. Jesus being Lord.
So you have direct experience of stuff, right? You experience the things around you. You see stuff, right? And that's you. You're the consciousness thing that sees and experiences.
I am a consciousness, yes, that has been created by the Creator who's eternal, yes.
So everything that you start with has to be a conscious experience of some kind. You don't. There's no option B here.
Not epistemologically, no. No, So I start with Jesus as Lord. I mean, obviously, when I think, that's what I'm thinking about. But when I'm trying to reason about these questions, I start with Jesus as Lord, not I'm experiencing something.
Okay, epistemology is a justified true belief, knowledge, something along close enough.
Sure.
Knowledge is a subset of belief, right?
Yeah, justified true one, yeah.
Yep. And so beliefs are ideas.
Yes.
Okay, so it does start as an idea.
What?
Jesus is Lord. You have belief, a feeling. Jesus is Lord. That's what you start with. The belief, a feeling, an idea.
Well, if you're asking how it takes place in my own head, well, sure, I'm a time-bound being. I started at a point, but I'm talking about a world. I'm talking about a worldview where human rights make sense. I'm not starting with myself. I'm starting with Jesus as Lord. So Jesus is Lord. In reality, are human rights coherent? Do they make sense? Are they grounded? And on what basis?
Well, so we're trying to start from your worldview and answer those questions, because all it's right now, all I see is you have an idea Jesus is Lord, and therefore you make up these assertions that it's justified. That's all I'm seeing.
That's not my worldview. My worldview is not I have an idea that Jesus is Lord. I don't start with myself on this worldview. I start with Jesus in the worldview. He is the creator. He's the sustainer of everything. So start with Jesus, and then stuff flows out from that. Well, in my head is not where I start. Like that's not what the foundation is grounded on. That's where my thoughts begin with, obviously, chronologically speaking. Okay, that's what my experience is, but my experience is not the basis of reality or morality, right?
But it's where you have to start to get to those things, right?
Well, it's what I can't access it other than that. I can't live it out, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's what epistemology. Epistemology is study of knowledge, right? Knowledge is a subset of belief.
Yep.
To have knowledge, you have to start with the belief, and then you have to filter out the false ones to get to the true ones. So what you start with is a belief, Jesus is Lord, in your head. That's the starting point.
Okay. Jesus, that's not what I start with to ground this question. I started with Jesus is Lord, not I believe Jesus is Lord. I don't start with I. Jesus is Lord in reality. What flows out of that? Because I could not exist and the universe would be basically the same. And human rights would still be grounded and coherent. Sure.
Again, so you have to start with a belief. You believe Jesus is Lord. Now you have to try and filter that one into one of the true beliefs or one of the false beliefs. Right?
I'm not.
If it's a false belief, then
I'm not really sure what you like other questions, other moral questions that come along later. Is that what you mean?
What? So I'm asking, like, you start with this belief Jesus is Lord, and then you conclude if Jesus is Lord, then we have morality, blah 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 blah. And I'm starting with just the first one. So you have a belief Jesus is Lord. Now you have to know, for it to be knowledge, it has to be a true belief. can't be a false belief. And so you have to filter out, is it one of the true beliefs or one of the false beliefs?
So Jesus being Lord being the foundation of the worldview that we're talking about right now, then yes, that belief is true. So are human rights grounded?
Based on what?
What? Well, based on the word of based on the word of God. On the word of God and his revelation to people that he's to his elect.
Okay, so you have belief Jesus is Lord, and you believe because you have this belief, it must be true.
No, because Jesus is Lord, he opens my eyes to see the truth if Jesus is Lord.
Okay, so you have a belief Jesus is Lord, and you have a belief that Jesus opened your eyes to tell you that he is Lord.
Yes, a true belief.
Okay, well, how do you know it's
the word of God and his revelation in my spirit?
Okay, so you have a belief Jesus is Lord, you have a belief he gave you a vision, and you have a belief it's true
not a vision, no.
So.
No, it was just a revelation that helped me understand his lordship.
Revelation.
And his salvation.
Revelation. It's kind of a vision,
okay.
I think.
I mean, vision has to do with seeing things. I didn't see anything. Didn't hear anything either.
No, visions don't have to see things. It's any kind of like
VIS is the root for eyes. But anyway, that's fine.
Logical fallacy. Like there are visions that come through spiritual divination and things that have nothing to do with sight.
Okay.
So not all visions entail sight. But so your justification is you believe Jesus is Lord, and you believe Jesus told you he's Lord, therefore Jesus is Lord.
No, there's no therefore Jesus is Lord is not the thing. Jesus is Lord, therefore reality. So we start with Jesus, we don't end with Jesus. He's not the destination of or a conclusion of an argument. He's the foundation of reasoning.
Well, again, so you got to start with a proposition, Jesus is Lord, and then show it's one of the true ones, not the false.
No.
You have to.
That's not true. That's not true. Given my worldview, Jesus is Lord is the ultimate beginning, first point. He's the foundation. He's not the end. He's the beginning. So we don't reason to Jesus. We reason from him. There's nothing in the world that is evidence against Jesus. Evidence against Jesus does not exist.
A ton of it does, but
no, that's because you're blinded by sin and you need to repent, and your reasoning is foolish.
No, it's just basic facts about history, like the fact that Jesus could have been. Lots of facts about Jesus are false, but
no, they're not. They're all. I'm not. The ones in the Word of God are true.
Nope. We can definitely prove that.
Nope, definitely can't.
The question, we definitely can't. Like Moses
definitely can't.
Exist.
Oh, he definitely did exist because the Word of God says so. It's the highest standard of evidence in the world. The Word of God is.
Well, then that just proves your worldview false very easily.
No, it doesn't.
It's a different topic. I don't really.
Yeah.
It does. It
okay.
does. In fact, you can just go to the history on that one.
You're not successfully differentiating between the worldview foundations here, because you keep asking me to step off of my worldview to answer your questions. So if you'd like me to answer your questions, I'm happy to, but you just need to take on my worldview foundation as it stands and go from there, as opposed to trying to transplant the second story of my worldview onto the foundation of naturalism, because that's not a proper way to go about things.
Well, I didn't say anything about naturalism. I said, why do you think your proposition is true and not false? And you said, well, I just assume it's true.
But you assume that naturalism is true for your foundation as well.
No,
yes,
I don't.
You do.
No,
okay.
I don't.
So you don't assume that Jesus is not Lord. Okay.
No.
So is it possible that Jesus is Lord?
Sure.
Okay. Except Jesus claims to be Lord literally of everything, including your owner, your creator, your sustainer, and the Lord of all of your reasoning. Is that possibly true?
And Harry Potter claims to be the magical
So is it possibly true, though?
universe.
Is it possibly true that Jesus literally owns you in all things?
Sure.
Really?
Sure.
Okay.
It's also possible that there's a magical pixie leprechaun that uses Jesus as a toy.
Yeah, you don't sound like it's real possible that Jesus is Lord. But anyway, I guess we're far afield at this point. Did you have any other questions?
Possible means there's no logical contradiction. There is no logical contradiction. There could be in some versions of Christianity, but not in general. You can make a general version of Christianity where there's no logical contradictions, and you can make a general version of Christianity where there's a leprechaun that owns Jesus.
Yeah, well, that's not Christianity. I was talking about the very specific, like the Bible-based brand. I think that you probably think that it's impossible that Jesus owning everything, and he has a decree that covers, literally every event that has ever taken place, including all of his people coming to him by faith because he
why are you saying that I think that's logically impossible? Like what do you think I think is the logical contradiction there?
I don't know. I just don't think that it's likely that I think that you're playing games here. I think that when I say that Jesus is Lord of all, being I ask you whether it's possible, and you're just kind of like, what?
Sure. Why would that not be possible? Like what you're saying is incoherent. Yes, it's possible. Why would it not be possible?
Okay, so it's
like possible just means there's no logical contradiction. Okay. That's all it means. So it's possible there's a leprechaun that owns Jesus too. Like that's also possible.
Okay.
Like the only things that are impossible is like a round square. That's
Okay.
impossible.
Yeah, I think we're having a little bit of communication differently. I'm sure part of some of that at least is my fault. So anyway, would you like to ask any more questions about the things I base morality on, given Jesus is Lord?
Well, I'm still like, so if I'm comparing the two models, my model starts with the phenomenon, makes principles, makes predictions, and that's how we differentiate true from false propositions. Yours starts with your Jesus is Lord proposition, but has no way to differentiate whether that's false or true, which seems to be a problem, like a big
Okay,
problem.
that might be your big mistake there. It does have a way to differentiate whether it's true. It is appeal to the Word of God, which is the highest standard of evidence in the universe. That's the appeal. That's how you know. That's God's revelation to humanity.
Okay, so reading the Bible is how you differentiate true from false propositions.
At least the subject matter that the Bible covers, yes.
Okay. And you don't think you could be wrong?
Like in my interpretation of the text?
Sure, or the text itself.
No, the text can't. I could be. I've been mistaken.
Why?
I've come to conclusions before that that I was like, oh man, I missed that thing in the text. So yeah, that happens sometimes.
Why could the Bible not be wrong?
It's the revelation of the God who never lies, who knows everything, and who sees everything and has a decree that covers literally every event to humanity. Remember, my worldview foundation, not yours, mine, because you're asking about mine, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Are human rights coherent given that view? Well, God is the one who owns everything. He's the one who owns all people. We're all his creatures. He's told us how the universe is. He's told us what is good. He's told us what his character is. And he's told us that the best thing that we can be is like him. And he's told us also that if we disobey those things, it causes death and terrible suffering. So there you go, human rights. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Well, that doesn't explain. What do you mean when you say human rights make sense?
Well, as I said in the opener, the greatest commandments according to the Lord Jesus are to love God and love neighbor as yourself. All right, so my neighbor has the expectation that I will treat him with love at all times, unless he forfeits it in a few different ways.
I'm asking a more general question. Like, what do you mean by human's right makes? Because when I say like, morality is objective, stance independent truths, that means it's a thing that exists independent of opinion or something. Is that like what you mean for? I don't know what you mean by human rights makes sense. Because it seems like to have human rights be stance independent, they have to exist independent of stances. So they have to exist outside of any mind. And then it would make sense to have objective human rights because they're stance independent.
I would distinguish.
I don't know what you mean when you say
I would distinguish between they exist outside of any human mind, but they do exist in the mind of God, which is the universal mind. So they're not, to me, they're in like with reference to me, the creature, they are objective.
Like, what does it mean to say that human rights are a thing? Like, what's the minimum criteria for human rights to be a thing?
It's a binding command of God on a person mandating certain behavior, or like refrain from what's the word? Abstention from behavior. That's the word. With also coming from a proper authority. And also probably with, you could throw in some ingredients about retribution and punishment if you disobey as well. And
so
conformity
to
an overarching standard.
What do you mean by over?
The character of God,
a few things
expressed in his law.
No, I don't mean like the specifics. I mean in general. What does it mean to have an overarching standard? Like
something more authoritative than me.
Okay. And so you're saying human rights make sense when there's an authority who tells you to do it and there's a punishment.
A rightful authority, yeah. Yeah, rightful authority. A punishment, and he's the definition of good and bad. Yeah.
And those are the two things that make something a right, is that if it comes from an authority and there's a punishment.
That's probably the best way to look at it, yeah.
Okay, so neither of those make sense to me. I don't think the fact that there's an authority has anything to do with human rights. Okay. I think human rights would be inerrant. Whether or not an authority says so would mean you don't have rights. That means they're subjective. It's arbitrary. So there's not rights. And the punishment also seems to make no difference whether or not you're punished for something. Like you can have a right and then violate it and someone not punish you, and it's still your right. The fact that someone punishes you also seems to be irrelevant.
What I meant was that if somebody violates my right, then they are punished for it.
Right. If they weren't punished, why would it be less of a right?
I think that it's the enforcement aspect, has to do with we're talking about, when we talk about human rights, we're talking about a very moral question. So, if I violate, it's just kind of its own unique class of things. When we violate moral behaviors, then, what are we talking about? Maybe you don't understand. Maybe we're not talking about the same thing when you talk about morality. It might help me if you tell me what a human right is in your mind.
Well, so right now I'm specifically just asking you what the minimum requirement is by your definition of a human right. If
it's a command of God.
If there's
a command of God in conformity with His character.
Okay, so you don't need punishments. Punishments aren't a requirement for a human right. You just need the command of an authority.
The Bible doesn't lay down exactly what a requirement is. That was just my best stab at inferring the definition of right from the biblical text.
Fair. Yeah, that's fair. I'm just general question. Don't need specifics exactly. So, if what you think is fundamental to a human right is a command of a God, that seems like what you think a human right is inherently arbitrary.
Not a God, Jesus, the God.
Wouldn't make a difference from my argument. It's saying it comes from a stance-dependent position would, by definition, make it subjective and not.
Yeah, right. Subjective from his point of view. Yeah, but from my point of view, it'd be objective.
That doesn't make sense. So how can it be subjective from one perspective and objective from another? That's like saying I subjectively see red and you subjectively see blue, therefore, or it's objective for me, but not for you. It doesn't make any sense. Like either it's objective from all stance positions or it's subjective. Those are like the only options.
Okay. Well, I think what you may be missing here is that people make mistakes. Human beings make mistakes. God doesn't make mistakes. He sees everything. You may think that something is a thing. I would argue that that's, that happens. Of course, that happens with me too. God sees everything the way it really is because He's the one who created it. He's the one who sustains it. He's the one who decreed it. So when I look at things, I may or may not get it right.
Whether or not you get it right doesn't make a difference. What matters is it stance independent or not. Like if I say I like chocolate, like I'm right, I like chocolate. Or if I say I like, I don't know, pineapple, I'd be wrong. I don't like pineapple. But those are subjective truths either way, even if I'm right. So even if I'm right about all of my subjective truths, I like chocolate and pizza and burgers, and I'm just right 100% of the time. They're still all subjective truths. None of them are objective.
All right, they're subjective. Okay, they exist in the mind of God, yes.
Okay, that's subjective.
Yes.
Okay, so there aren't, because for something I think to be a right has to be objective.
Okay, I disagree. I think that it has to be a command from God because He's the creator.
Why would a subjective command be a right?
Well, okay, remember what I think a right is. A right is a command from God to me. How am I supposed to treat other people? So however I'm supposed to treat other people, they have the right to be treated that way. God commands how I'm supposed to treat people, what way I'm supposed to treat people. So in that sense, it's a right.
Okay, so like I understand a right to be something that's inalienable, inviolable, something that's there innately. It's not an opinion-based thing. So for something to be a right, by my definition, it would have to be independent of any stances. And so if it's only true because a God thinks it or commands it, then that would be not a right by my definition. And so I would say that under your definition of theism, human rights make absolutely no sense. And in order to have human rights, you would need an objective standard that is stance independent.
Okay, I understand that that's your opinion, but I just don't think that you're properly understanding my worldview. You keep talking about a God, but we're talking about the creator of literally everything. Literally everything that exists is because of His decree and His creative power. So,
how does that affect the argument?
Well, because we being His creatures, He's told us this is what you're supposed to do. Okay, and this is how people are supposed to treat each other. So with that comes the demands, the standards by which we're supposed to treat people, and the promise of retribution for those who violate those commands. So it's something that exists by virtue of you being a human. Yes. So in that sense, it's innate. Yes, and it's unchanging as well. So in that sense, it's inalienable and it's unchangeable.
innate means it's in you, independent of whether or not there's a God. It's just a thing in you yourself,
Okay, well,
with no external reference.
I don't agree with that definition of innate. It's innate. It's innate in us because of what God has done.
That's literally
Because
the opposite of innate.
according to you, but not according to Jesus's to a worldview where Jesus is Lord.
You know what
You're just a
intrinsic
creature.
means?
You don't.
What intrinsic means? It's a synonym of innate. Intrinsic.
Okay.
It's an essential property of the thing in and of itself.
Okay. We are the most central property of any human is that we are a creation of the Lord Jesus Christ.
So
everything flows out of that.
If it's intrinsic, that means it doesn't need to be given to us from something else.
Well, there's no us before it's given. It's given to us as a package deal when we're conceived.
So if it's intrinsic, it's not given to us. It's in us.
Existence is given to us, and everything that comes along with it is also given to us. There's no us before. So there's no chronological like precedent. It's all like when you are conceived, you are a human being with all the rights that any other human has.
Okay, let's try it this way. A right is something that isn't given to you, because that would be the opposite of a right. That's a gift. So a right is something that you have that you cannot be given or taken away by anyone ever.
Okay, I kind of would agree with that, which is why I phrased it in terms of a command. I'm given commands to love my neighbor. So in that sense, it's not really given to him. I'm commanded to love my neighbor, period.
Okay. Still not following how commands get you rights, because commands are arbitrary.
Well, the commands of the creator of the universe are, if you want to say they're arbitrary, that's really stretching the definition. I mean, I guess if you want to say they're arbitrary, but they're unchangeable, they're unchanging. They are the very definition of good. They are the very revelation of the character of God.
Well, I would have problems with that too, because of all the mass murder and drowning babies and stuff. But I would say,
how do you know that that's bad?
Moral intuition, moral progress, predictions.
Okay, but well, I mean, obviously, the Word of God talks about those things being evil as well.
Moral intuition is evil?
No, not the things that you mentioned before that, like drowning babies and whatnot. Like, you're not supposed to do that.
Okay, but God does it.
Oh, well, God gets to. God has authority over all humans, because we are all sinners and we are all His creations. He gets to do with us as He chooses. It's only by His mercy that we draw a single breath or live a moment longer.
So the babies don't have rights. They can be drowned whenever God wants.
Well, God has the right and the authority to supersede the commands that He's given. When I'm talking about loving God and loving neighbor, I'm talking about a command that's given to me as a human being. But God is not bound by those standards. A lot of it is because we are all sinners. And so if God chooses to, end the life of a sinner at the time of His choosing, that's His business, it's His authority.
So that the sinner does not have a right to not be murdered.
Not by another human, correct?
So human rights aren't rights.
Are for human. They're for humans. They're commands of God to humans. So that for interpersonal interaction.
So do you think sheep rights make sense? Do you think a farmer gives sheep rights and that makes sense?
He didn't create them. Sheep do have certain limited rights according to the law of God, but yeah, they're given by the Creator.
No, I mean, like, literally.
But again, I'm using rights in terms of a very it's a very colloquial sense that we're using the term rights here. We have commands. Humans are given commands. How are we supposed to treat each other? And shorthand for that, I use rights.
I'm lost because if we're asking how do human rights make sense in Christian or naturalistic world? That's the question. Like, so
right.
By your definition, it seems like if you created them and you give them rights related to others of their same species, then that's enough to give them rights of their species. So let's say we create genetically modified sheep. We just create the cells and generate sheep, and we give them rights that they cannot sheep murder each other, but we can murder them and turn them into food or whatever. Does that make sense to call that sheep rights?
No, but it's not the same thing. We're not creating a sheep out of nothing, and we're not the arbiters of morality anyway. We're just
let's
people.
Say we did. Let's say we created sheep out of nothing, and gave them sheep rights, but we can still murder and eat them whenever we want. Does that make sense to call them sheep rights?
Oh, I don't know if I see the value in talking about creating things out of nothing. That's never been done. So
I agree.
Rough.
It has not been done, but
by a human,
by anyone. But the point is if we take your minimum requirement for what rights entail, create from nothing. You seem to added this one. Before it was just any authority. So it's an authority who created you.
I'd never said any authority. I always said
Right.
Jesus.
That was,
Jesus is the one who
I
gets to
never
tell us
said
what to
any
do.
authority. I said an authority. But so
Oh, sorry.
your original.
Well,
your
not
original,
an authority. There's only one.
That's
Only the
irrelevant.
one
That's
authority,
irrelevant to
Jesus.
the argument. Like all roses.
It's not. It's kind of not. It's kind of the very basis of my argument.
If you say it requires a rose, and I said a flower, right? A rose is a kind of flower, isn't it?
Yeah, but maybe it doesn't require a daisy. Maybe it requires a rose.
It'd still be true that it requires a flower,
Okay.
right? If you said, in order to open this lock, it requires a rose, and I said, okay, in order to open the lock, it requires a flower. Is that a true statement?
Maybe it's a very special kind of rose with all these different characteristics that you're not taking into account.
It requires a flower to open the lock. It's still true. Still true. Still a true sentence. Like I don't need to specifically say the flower that you listed. You say there's one flower that opens it, I'm fine. If I said a flower opens
if it's the authority, sure. If you want to say take the authority and make it into an authority so that you can, I don't know why, to make yourself feel better, go ahead.
It's just how generalization works when principles of propositions.
Okay.
So the original property you said was it requires an authority to justify human rights. Now you're saying it requires an authority who created the thing from nothing. It seems to be something you've added. Those are the two requirements, right?
Well, I didn't add anything. I laid out what my case is, and I referred to it always in terms of the commands of Jesus. And there's all this stuff that comes with Jesus if you know anything about the Bible, which I think you do. So, let's just stay on course here and let's talk about Jesus's lordship and not a God and not an authority, but we're talking about Jesus.
Requirement for this human rights thing that you're describing. So I thought you said it requires an authority, a genuine authority, whatever that means. And then, so if we had a genuine authority and could create sheep from nothing, so we have authority over the sheep, you're saying, no, that's not enough. You have to create them from nothing. It's not just that we have authority, we have to create them from nothing and have authority, right?
Moral authority. Yeah, moral authority.
And create them from nothing, or is that create them from nothing part irrelevant?
I'm sure the creation probably helps as well, but moral authority is mostly what I'm talking about here.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out what the minimum requirement here for what you think human rights entails.
Okay, I don't think that that's a helpful question. So the rights that people have are because we've been commanded by God to love our neighbor as ourselves.
Well, so like I can answer the question pretty easily. The minimum rights for objective moral rights is the fact that there is some innate objective fact that is stance independent that exists true in the universe. That would be it.
You said that was, and you think that's simple?
Simple? I never said anything about simple. I just said that's the minimum requirement. Okay. So the minimum requirement for objective human rights is that there has to be a thing that instantiates the rights that is stance independent, and that would be the minimum requirement for objective human rights.
Okay. The minimum requirement is Jesus commands you. Even simpler.
No, because that entails a mind and a personal mind and an all-powerful mind.
Yeah, Jesus.
That's the opposite of simple. Yes. It's literally the opposite of simple.
That's a very simple proposition. Jesus is Lord.
Simple proposition isn't the same as simple ontological entailments. Those are not the same thing.
Well, yeah, that's true. I agree.
So what I think the minimum requirement for objective moral rights is a thing in the universe that exists stance independently, and what you think the minimum requirement for moral human rights is Jesus said so.
Uh-huh.
You don't see a problem there.
I'd like to. No, not at all. I would like to ask you a little bit more about the thing that exists in the universe that is stance independent. I don't want to try to get away from you. So if you have any more questions for me on my worldview, but I did have a couple more.
I've asked you for a while. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. That's cool. So in what way does the thing that exists in the universe exist? That you referred to?
I don't know if there's ways to exist. Like you either exist or you don't exist. I don't know what you mean by ways to exist.
Okay. Well, okay. So my computer exists. It's made of matter.
Sure.
Right. Okay. The thing that the moral, the right that you're talking about, does it exist in the same way? Is it made of matter?
Sort of. I'd say it's more like a quantum field, like a law of physics. Sure.
A quantum field? Okay. Is it composed of particles?
No, particles are composed of fields. Fields are the fundamental thing.
Okay. Is it sentient? No. Okay. How does it confer rights?
I don't know what you mean.
On people.
Okay.
So I'm a person, and I might say I have a right for X. Okay. And we decide that I have a right to X by what? Let's say it's a statement that's never been made before. I have a right to I don't know. How would you go about understanding whether that is indeed a right that exists?
If it was in correspondence to the nature of the field, then you would have the right, and if it's not in correspondence to the nature of the field, you would not have the right.
How would you know whether it's in correspondence with the nature of the field?
Well, if we could actually measure the field, we would know.
How would we measure it?
Science in the future.
Okay. What about now? Is there a way to know
now? If it was, I'd have a Nobel Prize.
Okay, that'd be nice. Is there a way? So, but you certainly think that human rights are known at this time.
Yeah, we estimate them. So like we use the best guesses we have with the best evidence we have to try and get as close to the truth as possible, even though we don't have certainty. So like Newton estimated the gravitational force. He was wrong, but he got close.
Okay. So so let's take that to punching a baby. All right. So we estimate that punching a baby is wrong. Could it be right that maybe slapping a baby multiple times is like, maybe that's close?
What?
Like, is it possible that we veered a little bit?
Sure, it's possible. Just it would go against the evidence. It's like it's possible we're in the matrix.
The evidence so far.
Yeah,
right?
we could get evidence to alternatives.
However, there have been many times in the course of human history and this history of science that people have thought a thing, and then they were proven to be mistaken, like Newton,
like
for
the
example.
Bible. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Or like we could just take an example that we both agree with, Newtonian physics. Okay. So that was proven to be not exactly 100% correct, even though people thought it was back then, right?
I don't think so.
You don't think there's anybody who thought that Newtonian physics was okay?
Like no, I don't.
How about that the Earth was a perfect globe? I mean, I'm just trying to think of something that was consensus. I mean, you've read Kuhn, right? So this question of the changing paradigms in science, there are accepted ideas that then get changed by future generations.
I don't think anybody back then thought they were 100% correct and had everything solved. Like they were all like, yeah, this is the tentative solution. Nobody thought they solved all the questions. That was not a thing.
Well, but do you think that they thought that they had arrived at a conclusive idea about a given topic?
No.
At least some people. You don't think that anybody did? You've never met a religious person who thought that they've got it. I mean, you're talking to one right now.
But I mean, like in science, the position is always this is a tentative result, and we're going to wait for better data. Like nobody thought Newtonian physics answered all the questions in the universe. Like nobody thought that.
How do you know that nobody thought that? Have you what kind of overview of all the scientific literature that is not even extant today have you done?
Because there were still unsolved problems at the times. If it had solved all the problems, they'd be like, the problems are solved. Like.
Now, I'm not talking about the number of problems. I'm talking about a given problem, and they thought that they had solved it.
That's
right. You don't think that there's anybody in the course of human history who thought that question is now solved.
So if, for example, they thought they had 100% solved gravity, then all of the questions about what gravity does would have to have been solved. That's what it means to have solved gravity. And so if there's a question about something in gravity that we don't know about yet, there's a problem that hasn't been solved, and you haven't solved all the problems related to gravity. So Newton, did not.
Right, but what if they haven't even thought of the question to ask yet? You really don't think that there's been any people in the course of human history, even in the scientific fields, who were dogmatic about their conclusions, even though later they were proven to be wrong?
Not in the case of Newton.
Okay.
So
well, just take any case. It doesn't have to be Newton. It could be any case.
Okay. Sure, some people were dogmatic. Yes.
Okay. And then they were proven wrong. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So what I would like to ask, Captain, kind of takes a while there. So we have these provisional conclusions that we've drawn today about punching babies, right?
Yes.
Or we could ask ourselves, should we be firebombing cities? Should we be throwing homosexuals off of tall towers and things of that nature? Those things matter in the here and now,
right.
And the ideas about people are the ideas that people have about those very important questions, because they have to do with like life and death.
Yes.
They're not necessarily agreed upon by everybody. Is there a way for us to know?
With 100% certainty? No.
Okay. How much certainty would you say that there is?
I have no idea.
Okay. Could you be like one of those people who had the dogmatic conclusion 300 years ago about topic X?
Always.
Okay. Would you know? Would you know today, would you know whether in 300 years you'll be proven wrong?
No.
Is it possible then? It's possible that presumably you think that homosexuals have the right not to be thrown off of tall towers.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is it possible that in 500 years you could be shown to be in error about that?
Sure.
How would that happen? How would you be shown to be in error?
Novel testable predictions that confirm an alternative hypothesis.
Such as?
Someone makes a prediction that the Christian God is correct, and the Christian God comes down and says, "Yep, I was right. Gay is wrong. Throw them off rooftops."
Okay. How about without invoking the supernatural? Because I think that you're a naturalist, right?
Okay. Someone would predict that there is a naturalistic law of physics that has a different model of morality, and they'd make a prediction that the moral standard of all life and like aliens are like eating babies or something. And we discover all alien species in the universe all like to eat babies.
What difference would that make if all alien species like to eat babies?
Any novel testable prediction is evidence. Doesn't matter what it is.
But when I reminded you that there are people in prison today for molesting children,
Novel means
that's not a
something we
novel
don't
testable
know
prediction.
yet. Novel means something we don't know yet. Novel means
Well,
new.
but you might not know that thing. Maybe you're wrong about that.
About the definition of novel?
No, not about novel, about whether a novel is necessary. What if it's a testable prediction, but it's not necessarily novel? Maybe we got it wrong. Would there be a way to know
that? Yes. So, for example, a testable prediction that is novel would be, for example, the sun will rise tomorrow. That's a testable prediction. We can wait till tomorrow and see if the sun rises. And if that's evidence, then I can say, if the sun rises tomorrow, the spaghetti monster is real and Jesus is false. Now, obviously, you wouldn't accept that, because if it's something we already know, everyone can make that prediction. Everyone can say the sun will rise tomorrow. And so it would be evidence for all of the hypotheses they all came up with. This is not a very good model. That's why it needs to be novel. It needs to be something new, because predicting something we don't know yet is very hard. Predicting something we already know is very, very easy. Anybody can do it. That's what distinguishes why we need the novel.
This whole thing about novel precludes like corrections to previously held, majority opinion. And I think that's a mistake.
I have no idea what you're talking about. It doesn't preclude anything.
If it has to be novel, then we're talking about, what I'm asking you is about whether we got things right in the past that we take for granted today. Okay, or things that we take for granted today, conclusions that have been arrived at, maybe we've held them for a while. But I'm calling those things into question. And then you're saying that the prediction has to be novel, but maybe we got it wrong in the first place.
So in order to overthrow an old model, you need to make novel predictions with a new model. So the reason Newtonian mechanics was overthrown by general relativity is that Einstein predicted that light would curve at a specific rate around the sun. He predicted the perihelion of Mercury. He predicted gravitational waves. We confirmed all those things. So those were predictions that Einstein didn't make, that he did make, and that's why we overturned Newtonian mechanics.
Okay. You're familiar with the is-ought distinction?
Yes.
I would hope.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think that you branched it? Do you think that you bridged the is-ought distinction? No.
No, I think.
Is there any ought? Is there an ought?
They're hypothetical imperatives, not categorical imperatives.
Okay. So what bearing does that have on my behavior today? Because we're not talking about whether I see a TV. We're talking about whether I should punch this baby or throw this homosexual off a tower, right?
So if we know the facts of what makes something moral, then we can say, once I know these facts, I ought to do them. But the oughts aren't in the moral thing. So like, is something moral because you ought to do it, or ought you do it because it's moral? How would you answer that question?
Well, if Jesus is Lord, then I ought to do it because it's moral.
Right. So it's the second one. I agree. I think that you ought to do something because it's moral. It isn't moral because you ought to do it. And what that question emphasizes is the structure of where the ought is. If something is moral because you ought to do it, then there's this bubble of morality, and there's a bunch of principles of what makes up the bubble, and oughtness would be inside of the bubble. So it's inside. Oughtness is required inside of whatever properties there are to make something moral. But if you ought to do something because it's moral, that means there's the same bubble and a bunch of lists of the properties that make something moral, like yours would say Jesus commanded you or something. And then after you know that fact, then there's this other bubble outside of that, which is the ought, and says, once I know this fact, then I ought to do it. Which means the oughtness itself isn't anywhere in morality. It's not.
Okay. Why ought I do things that are moral?
If you want to be moral, you ought to do moral things.
Okay. What if I don't want to be moral?
If you want to be immoral, you ought to do immoral things.
Okay. would you say that there's a value differential between the two? If I want wanting to be immoral versus wanting to be moral? What's the so what? Give me a so what. Like, here's a guy who wants to be immoral. Here's a guy who wants to be moral. So what?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So it's a fact of the matter that some things are moral, and if you do them, you're moral. And there's a fact of the matter some things are immoral, and you do them, you're immoral. What you want to do doesn't change either of those. So,
okay. So if somebody comes along and starts punching babies,
they are immoral.
Okay, according to you. All right, according to your model, which might be proven wrong later. Okay, they might say they've made a novel testable prediction that they'll come up with at some point.
Sure.
And meanwhile they're punching babies. People try to stop them. They're more powerful. So what?
They're immoral. Like it's a factual statement. If you do
so it's just
things,
thing that you say, like, that's a TV. This guy's immoral. I don't like broccoli. Right?
Yes, that's how truth works.
Okay. Is there any way? Tell me the difference between the statement, I like broccoli, or I dislike broccoli, or I dislike pineapple. I dislike pineapple, and I dislike raping children. What's the difference between those two statements?
What's the difference? They're different subject matters.
Okay. Is that it?
I guess so.
Okay, because one could say I dislike pineapple and I dislike studying biology. That would be kind of like different subject matters too, right?
So I can say I can dislike chocolate and I can dislike the fact that the moon is 255,000 miles away. One is a subjective preference, one is an objective correspondence to reality, and your dislike is just irrelevant to either of those.
An objective reality. Okay.
Yes.
I guess that gets back to how we discover reality. But I mean, so far we've seen that what you think you've discovered about this, this field or whatever of morality, I mean, is provisional. It could change. So you don't know whether it's right. Yeah, you don't know whether it's right.
I can still know it. Provisional things, you can still know them.
So you think. Is that known provisionally as well?
Yes, everything is provisionally, and you can know it provisionally.
Oh. Is that known provisionally as well?
Yes, the same question. So knowledge doesn't require certainty. It's called fallibilism. It's the consensus of all the experts in all of the fields because it's pretty well understood. Like, I can believe things based off of
appeals to authority. Right?
No.
Wasn't that an appeal to authority just now?
No, because I was literally about to explain why it's true. The reason is because I can have a belief, and that belief can be justified by some fact, which causes me to have a reason to think it's more likely to be true. And if it's true, then it's knowledge, even if I don't have 100% justification. It's very easy to understand. So, like, I believe the moon is 255,000 miles away. I believe that because I can bounce ham radios off the moon and it takes 2.5 seconds for it to hit the moon and come back. And based off the speed of light, 299,000 kilometers per second, we can measure that the moon is 255,000 miles away. I'm justified in believing the moon is 255,000 miles away. Could I be wrong? Yes, we could be in the matrix. Do I have a justified belief? Yes. If it's true, then I have knowledge because I have a justified true belief.
Well, it's not justified if you're in the matrix, but I guess that's another discussion.
It's still justified. Justification is just you have a thing that gives you a reason to believe it's more likely to be true. So justification doesn't mean...
How in the world would you measure that? Anyway, that's another discussion. We should. Okay.
Novel testable predictions would be how.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which assumes all kinds of things, but okay.
Not really.
Okay. Gotcha. Do you agree with the statement that the universe is indifferent to your actions?
Yes.
Even though that the field that you mentioned is it part of the universe or is it something else?
Yes, but it's not conscious.
Okay, so it's indifferent.
Yes, like it doesn't have an opinion.
Okay, but people have opinions.
Yes.
Which sometimes are mistaken.
Most of the time, yes.
Gotcha. Well, cool. I had my lunch break and it is now over. So I think I'm done with my line of questioning. Did you have any other questions for me before I wrap this up?
Nope. I think that covered mine. Like, I think I showed the difference in the justifications of our model for sure.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you very much for the time. Thanks for inviting me on the channel.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to give any links or references where people can find more about your work?
Yeah, please feel free to reach out to me at youtube.com/RHOLOGY, that's Rology, or twitter.com. Rology is my handle there.
Thanks. Appreciate you coming on. Have a nice day.